Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hive's protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Thanks, Sherry, and thank you, Global Patties. You know, each week we get to talk about how much we appreciate our sponsor support, and we know you'd rather we get right to talking about beekeeping. However, our great sponsors are critical to help making all of this happen. From the transcripts, the hosting fees, the software, the hardware, the microphones, the subscriptions, the recorders, they enable each episode. So with that, thanks to Bee Culture Magazine for continuing their presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture has been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We're really happy you're here. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to subscribe or follow Beekeeping Today podcast and give us a 5-star rating. It really does help. Also, we are now adding complete transcripts of each episode on the website after the show notes. Check them out. You can also leave questions and comments online under each show. You can leave a comment, ask a question, reply to a question, ours or listeners. Click on Leave a Comment at the top of the episode's show notes to join the discussion. Have you listened to an episode and thought, that person sounds really interesting, and I'd like to know more about them? Well, now you can. Each episode links to a guest profile. Each profile has a guest photo, bio, contact information, including Instagram and Twitter details if they have them. Check it out. And finally, share the podcast with your beekeeping friends, email them links, or mention it at your next beekeeper meeting. Hey, Kim, welcome back. I'm glad to see you sitting there.
Well, it's been a while. I apologize for being absent. Ran into some things here at home that had to be taken care of, and it was either you or my family, and guess what? My family won, but I'm back, so it's good to be here.
Well, no, that's fine, and we're glad you're fine. We had made sure that our listeners knew that you were fine, but yeah, well, glad to see you back there in the chair.
Jim did a good job. I'm glad he was here to pick up my slack.
And I filled in for you on Honeybee Obscura,
yes,
so I hope I did okay and kept your chair warm. I tried not to get it too dirty.
Well, say, didn't I hear that you were out picking up bees just the other day?
Yeah, it was, yes, I was. Yes, you did hear right. We actually received some packages a couple weeks earlier this year. And a surprise, but didn't really surprise me because we had heard earlier from John Miller that everything was running early down in California. So I half expected packages to be early this year. So yes, so Saturday I was able to go pick up several packages from nearby here in the Pacific Northwest in Rochester, Washington, actually. Quite a few people standing in line, and I took my recorder and I said, hey, these folks probably would like to tell our listeners all about why they're picking up bees, and that's what I asked them about.
Oh, good.
Let's listen to that now and see what they had to say. I'm at the Beeline Apiaries and Woodenware in Rochester, Washington. It's a package and nuke pickup day, and I was here, thought I'd talk to a couple people, find out what they're doing here. Well, that's obvious, but their plans for the bees this summer and their experiences, and just general chit chat. Let's go talk to some folks. All right, and what's your name?
My name is Ed Suplee.
Hey, Ed. So you're here at Beeline Apiaries and Woodenware, picking up your bees. What are you getting today?
I'm getting 2 Italian nukes.
2 Italian nukes. Why did you choose Italian over the Carniolans?
Well, I think we got Carniolans last time, and I understand that maybe they're a little more hardy. So I thought we'd try the Italians this time and see if we can get them to winter over better.
Yeah. So how was your overwintering experience last year?
Last year was not good.
Okay.
I think I didn't see a lot of dead bees, so I think they swarmed. Season before we had some success. The season before that, not so much. So we're still trying to figure it out. We're newbies, basically.
Well, that's good. I mean, even the guys who've been keeping bees for 40 years will tell you they're still trying to figure it out. So it always changes.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, let's talk to another beekeeper. And you are?
I'm Jacek Cameron Volkowski.
Jacek?
Jacek, yeah.
Jacek.
It's a German name. So.
Yeah, very good German name. So tell me what are you picking up today?
I'm picking up Italians today, and we pick our colonies usually every year because the winter we don't do well, and mostly because of temperature fluctuations. So if the temperature goes down and they hibernate, and when it goes up for 2-3 days, they wake up, and when the temperature goes down, they die. So, and we had a couple of, one year we had yellow jacket nest next to it, so we got killed.
Oh no.
But otherwise, it's just hobby. So, a colleague from work got me into it, and I thought okay, so we have a warrior hive, so we don't do the long straw. So my wife calls them, it's a spa hive, because we don't put combs in it, we just have the little bars and they pull the comb as they want, and usually we get 2 or 3 gallons per season of the honey, so it's fun for the kids.
Oh, very good.
Recreational, so no industry.
And did you overwinter, and how did that go for you?
Last time our colony escaped with another queen. So we had nothing, and because of COVID we didn't have bees last year, so this is the first time after 2 years. And we had one time a colony which overwintered 1 year, so we had them for 2 years. But otherwise, our experience has been every year new colony. So, but okay, it's $140, but it's fun. So you don't need to do much for them. So just dump them in and watch out. Our cat likes them. I like them watching. So
it's enjoyable. Well, very good. Well, good luck with your bees this season. So. Yeah, very good. Thanks. Sir, you're waiting here for your packages. What are you picking up today?
4 pounders, 4 of them.
4 pounds of Italians or
No,
Carniolans?
Carnelian. I can't pronounce the word.
Carniolans.
There we go.
Yeah, there you
Good
go.
enough for me.
You've been keeping bees for long?
Oh, about 10, 12 years.
Yeah, very good, very good. How did your bees do this last winter?
Got some soap in my water and they killed them.
Oh, that's real bad. Well, I'll let you get right to them. Best of luck to you this season. Can I talk to you about bees? Yeah. All right. Who are you and what are you picking up today?
I'm Scott and I'm picking up 2 Italian nukes.
2 Italian nukes. So what made you choose Italian over Carniolans?
Because my Italians didn't die last year.
Well, that's a good reason. So how long have you been keeping bees?
2 years.
2 years? How many colonies do you have?
Well, this will make 3, and then I've got 2 Saskatraz packages coming in 2 weeks.
Oh, very good. So have you had Saskatraz in your past?
Nope. It should be a fun learning experience.
Well, very good. Well, best of luck for your bees this year.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. And what is your name?
I'm Noelle Sharp.
Noelle. And what kind of bees are you picking up today?
I'm getting a 4-pound package of Carnies.
Carnies. What made you choose Carnies over Italians?
They just seemed a little bit easier, might fit my area. I live out in PL, so.
All right. So how long have you been keeping bees?
This is my first year having them on my property, but my dad and I have had them last year as well. So.
And this is your dad?
Yep.
And yours?
Hi, Bill Cummings.
Bill Cummings. And how long have you been keeping bees?
Same time. We got them. We started at the same time.
All right. So are you keeping them then together on the same property?
Yeah. Well, hers is on her property that she's picking up now, and then I'm expanding a little bit. So.
Oh, very good. Well, best of luck this season with your bees.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm talking now with Harold Weaver, the owner of Beeline Apiaries and Woodenware here in Rochester, Washington. How was your trip down to pick up the bees?
Oh, I had a real good trip. I went down Thursday and spent the night down there in Redding, California, and then picked up the bees yesterday morning and drove home. Got here about 9:30. Everything went well.
A very boring trip then.
Yeah, basically, that's right.
No one likes an exciting trip hauling bees. So how many packages did you pick up and how many nukes?
I don't have a number of each one necessarily. It was just over 400 total packages and nukes together.
Now, is that the largest you've ever brought back up here to Rochester?
I'm not sure. It was more than last year, so it's a full load on a gooseneck trailer, 24-foot gooseneck trailer that we brought. So, yeah, it was a full load.
Fantastic. And how long have you run this shop here in Rochester?
We have done it now for 10 years, I believe. I believe it's 10 years that we've been doing it.
That's really cool. And you're part of the Beeline. How's that work? The Beeline Co-op, I guess.
We're all independent businesses, but we all use the same name. So there's some working together. Maybe that co-op name is a good way to describe it, but we work together.
Well, that's fantastic. And you manufacture all your woodenware here for the local customers.
That's right.
Very good. Well, I know you're real busy today. I will let you get back to your business, but thanks for bringing up bees to this part of Washington, and look forward to next season, too.
Well, thank you.
So you see, everybody there was excited. They were a couple were a little apprehensive. There were a couple people who didn't want to talk to me. Maybe they're not fans of the podcast. No, I'm sure they're fans if they'd only listened to it, but they just didn't feel comfortable on the microphone. And it was great. It was a great day. They ran a good operation down there at Beeline, Apiaries, and Woodenware in Rochester, Washington.
Yeah, package day anywhere is always a good day.
It is. It's fun. It's a day of hope and promise and expectation.
And this year I'll do better.
Do you hear me? That's all I was saying that day.
Well, the people that we got coming on today.
Yeah.
The people from ProtectABee and Best for Bees.
Yes.
What they're doing next year may be better.
I've and researching for today's episode, I was going through the information on their website, bestforbees.com, and I am excited. I'm looking forward to talking to Dr. Erica Shelley.
Yep. It sounds like it should be good.
Yep. Well, let's hear from our good friends at Strong Microbials and get right into our discussion with Erica.
Hello, beekeepers. Your honeybees face a lot of challenges out there. Unbalanced food sources from monoculture crops, holding yards, drought, food shortages, antibiotics, pesticides, and pathogens like chalk brood. To overcome these challenges, your bees need the multiple bacteria that are in all nectars, pollens, and the environment. These bacteria aid honeybees' digestion and improve your honeybees' response and resilience to pesticides. Now you can help improve your honey colony health with a quick, easy, and safe-to-use product. Strong Microbials Super DFM Honeybee uses naturally occurring bacteria to restore the healthy gut biome of your honeybees. Check them out today at www.strongmicrobials.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Sitting across the virtual Zoom table right now is none other than Dr. Erica Shelley from Best for Bees up in Ontario, Canada. Erica, welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today, Jeff.
Nice to get a chance to meet you, Erica. I've read a lot about the things that you're involved in.
Thank you, Ken.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and how you got interested in bees, and then we'll go from there.
All right. So I'm Erica Shelley, and I live in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada, which is in southwest Ontario, about an hour outside of Toronto. And my journey into beekeeping is very similar, I think, to the majority of people that get into beekeeping, in that I thought I was going to save a whole lot of money on honey by getting into beekeeping. Yeah. So that was really how my journey started. So my background is I am a scientist. So I got my PhD in molecular and medical genetics, and kind of close to you there, Jeff, in Portland at Oregon Health Sciences University. Yeah. And that was many years ago. So, I've been involved in fields of microbiology and genetics, and fungal research actually was my background. And anyways, hobby beekeeper started probably, I guess, about 12 or 13 years ago, and got my first 2 hives, and the science side of me just kind of took off with beekeeping. And I started traveling actually around the world, learning from some amazing and incredible beekeepers and learning about different beekeeping techniques. So my first hives were 10 frame Langstroths as well as top bar hives. So I ran both of those in the beginning.
Were you there in Canada starting those up, or were you while in Portland area?
Oh, no. So that was in Canada. So I came to Canada like right around 2000. So I've been here a long time now. And so my entire beekeeping journey has been in Ontario, which we have fairly warm summers and very long winters. Yeah. And so that makes for very stressful beekeeping. In general, I know beekeeping can be hard, but when you're in cold climates and you have long winters, it makes for a lot of nail biting for a lot of the year, where you're wondering if your hives have survived or not. So I just got into beekeeping, and then eventually the research and the beekeeping started crossing over, and I started getting hired to do all sorts of different things. So it originally started out, I was teaching beginner beekeeping classes, and then companies and community centers started asking me to keep bees at their locations to fulfill their green initiatives. And so I started, working on the education component of the importance of pollinators and the importance they have for our food security. And so, that became, we called them, our business bees. So those were our bees.
So you had your personal bees for your honey, and then you had your research or your bees for clients and customers.
Yeah. And those weren't so much research. I mean, we're always researching as beekeepers, but those weren't really research bees. They were what we call education bees. So they'd be on the rooftops of those buildings or in their community areas. And, we are actually installing a hive at Google headquarters here in Canada this year. So, these places that they care about, the environment and wanted to bring that sort of education to their clients. But Best for Bees was becoming a well-known name at this point.
Let's talk about that. I know Best for Bees does a lot of different, and looking at your website, and it's FORbees.com, and not the number 4, but FORbees.com. And you are doing a lot of work. Is it just you, or do you have people working with you, for you? Are you partnering with other folks?
Yeah. So at this time, we have there's 5 employees that are, working for Best for Bees. And we actually have close to 20 different consultants that we work with on all sorts of things. And we're also part of a group here called the Accelerator Center, which is a startup or an incubator program that has mentors that help with all sorts of stuff when you're starting a company. So even though Best for Bees has been around for over 10 years now, we're doing a big pivot right now, and that's where we needed some extra assistance as we started moving into producing something that people could buy. That's a huge pivot from our consulting that we do. So we more of our time is spent. I was talking about those business bees and how that kind of got us into it, but more of our time is spent now as consultants for honeybee and bumblebee research related to beekeeping and pollination. So we've become more of a research company. And then out of that research, with the University of Guelph, we developed a product that is using brand new technology to improve bee health called bee vectoring. And so that's where the pivot happened, was into now developing a product. And now we're looking at holistic, and I use that term not in like natural way, but holistic, where we're going to be supporting beekeepers in multiple ways to make sure that they can have healthier bees.
Very good.
Well, Erica, it sounds like your group sort of divides itself between the academic side of this and the practical application of what the academic side of this is. Is that and that's a hard dance to do. I worked on that for a little while and decided there were better ways to make a living than trying to do both of those. So when it comes to what you are doing and your group is doing, which of those do you like best, A, and which of those are doing the best for your group? And I'm going to guess that they're different.
They are different. So Ken, first of all, super insightful, right? That dance between academia, practical beekeeping, and when you're looking at companies and doing things privately, right? So in the world of academia, so we've always been a private company that, we don't really write a ton of grants where we're getting money for research. If we are brought in, those people have written grants for research to pay for our services. So we're really consultants in that arena.
I want to interject something here. When I was doing that same thing, somebody called us Science for Hire.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yes, I love it. Science for Hire. That's exactly what we are. And we really can come in as a third party as well, because we don't have usually we don't have a benefit from having the data that we have. This is the data, do what you want to do with the data. Or we give recommendations based on the data that we get and to improve, whatever. The fun thing about being a private company like us is we're under so many non-disclosure agreements that even alluding to some of the stuff that we do, I can't do, because it would give away some of the things that we do with our company. But all I can say is that, people bring us in because they're looking to make whatever system they're working with more efficient, or to see if it affects honeybee health or bumblebee health or pollinator health. And I know that's kind of a little ambiguous, but those are the things we work on.
Hey, podcast listeners. If you've got a couple years of beekeeping under your belt and you're looking for a new challenge, available from ProtectABee is the Hog Half Comb System, a mess-free comb honey system that you put on a strong hive for your bees to fill. Made of 32 to 40 individual food-grade recyclable cassettes, it only takes popping off the covers and sticking on your labels to get your half combs ready for sale. Visit betterbee.com/HOGG today to learn more and start making your own mess-free comb honey.
So it sounds like when I say Science for Hire, we've talked to people here who do basically the same thing. Companies come to them and say, "We need this work done. You guys know bees. We know. We don't. You do the work, give us the data, and we'll take it from there." But at the same time, I'm guessing that there are things that you as a group do because you want to know and you want to be able to use the information and apply it to some problem other people or you have. Is that correct?
So I will say, Kim, if you'd asked me that question 2 years ago, I would have said that no, we come in and with the consulting part of it. So not that education component that we talked about earlier, which it's really, that's a different arm of what Best for Bees does. But I would have said that no, really, we were a neutral party that came in to answer the questions that were being asked by the companies that have hired us, and that you know, we weren't looking for a specific answer, and we weren't looking specifically to help beekeepers at that point. But we were brought into this project with the University of Guelph to work on bee vectoring with Peter Kevin, who invented this over 20 years ago. And so he wanted to test whether it could work, and he wanted to develop this system. And so he brought in our company originally to help with that. But then I invented an entirely new device to solve his problem. And then basically we've now taken that research away from the University of Guelph. And now that is Best for Bees' baby. So we are now are doing what you're saying, and that we're working on our own project to, improve bee health and help out in general with the entire beekeeping community.
Good. I want to get to your ProtectABee project in a second, but I want to back up a half a step. And for people who have not been associated with or do not know, what is vectoring? What are you doing there?
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, so bee vectoring. So vectoring just means that something's being moved. And so, bees vector pollen all the time. That's how pollination happens. The bees visit a flower, they get pollen on them, then they go and they visit another flower and they drop that flower behind. And so that pollen has been vectored. So in the case of bee vectoring, and again, this was Peter Kevin's work along with some other scientists as well. They developed bee vectoring technology. So I want to go back and I want to actually make sure I use the correct scientific terms with this and explain why we're calling it bee vectoring now. It originally is entomovectoring, which is vectoring by any insect. And then apivectoring is actually the technological, the appropriate name for this. So vectoring by bees. And bee vectoring then just is sort of, the easy digestible way to talk about it. So you might hear me use apivectoring or entomovectoring or bee vectoring. And in our case, when we're talking about bees, they're all one and the same.
Is there a distinction between the honeybee and say the bumblebee vectoring?
No, it's still apivectoring.
All right.
And in fact, the original apivectoring was done by bumblebees. And then now just recently has Bee Vectoring Technologies that's located in Mississauga, which is 30 minutes down the road from me. They're now using honeybees for bee vectoring as well. And so that bee vectoring, that's the original bee vectoring, where they're taking fungus and they're delivering it to crops to protect them against pests and diseases on the crops. So in particular, berry crops is the target, and fungi that grow on those berry crops. So we call that bee vectoring outspencing. So that's where the bees are carrying something out to the plants that they're visiting. And then the vectoring project that we worked on is inspencing. And that's where we now have bees carrying powders into the hive, or really anything, but we focused on powders. We have a special powder that sticks to the bees that is non-toxic. We know it's safe for the bees and also safe for honey. And it's the right properties in terms of it doesn't stick to them so much that it doesn't fall off. So you're kind of looking for something that stays on just so, and then drops off. So that's a carrier powder, or what we call the diluent. And then you add in whatever protectant you're using. So in the case of crops, they're using fungi. And these are soil fungi that are naturally in the soil that get delivered to the crops that outcompete the fungus that, like black mold on strawberries and stuff like that are not really desirable on your crops. So that's the original bee vectoring that is started and is actually out there working today for farmers.
Wow, that's really interesting that they're actually using it to deliver. Like, I hadn't heard that they're using the honeybees or bees for vectoring to specific plants or specific crops.
If you go back several years, Jeff, when I was spending some time in California in the almond pollination, there were people there who were actually collecting almond pollen beforehand, putting it in a container that the bees had to walk through when they left the hive, picking up some of that pollen, going to visit almond flowers and actually pollinating them. The purpose of that, as I understood it then, was to make sure that you got across, you didn't have the same variety of pollen as the variety of flower that they were visiting, so that you got some hybridization there. And Eric, I'll go to you. Is that something that you could be doing with this technology that you're doing, using pollen instead of? I like the idea of protecting plants, and I have another question for you in a half a second that's coming up. It's going to happen here in a minute, but could you be using pollen, using the techniques and technology that you have?
Well, I'm first of all going to just say that if you give bees pollen and you ask them to take it out of a hive, that's the least natural thing that you could ask bees to do. So let's just put that in our heads first, right? So if it's an active pollen that could help with pollination, the bees are going to be more likely to be into the pollen and moving it in. So I'm just going to say that that's a difficult problem in itself. And the second thing also that you have to look at is sort of the activity of that pollen. But we've done research with pollination where we have been looking at getting hybrids so we have different male plants and the female plants and yeah, that is important in terms of sometimes getting better crops. So I can see why they would want to have, kind of that hybridization that you're talking about. Could we do that with our system? Now, our system has really been tested only for inspensing in terms of delivering into the hives. And we've had huge success. We can get oxytetracycline in for prophylactic treatment of American foul brood very successfully. And with our system, we've had success getting fungi into our system, but we have not tested a single thing going out of the hive. And that's just because has not been in our current scope to look at that.
Okay, you mentioned oxytetracycline. You're looking at foul brood product. So what you have is a bee returns to the hive, walks through this entrance, walks through the drug that she's supposed to deliver, then goes into the hive, and just because bees are the way bees are, it starts getting spread around. Has this been effective in A, preventing, or B, curing foul brood?
So what we did last year, or actually for 2 years, is we did a study where we compared the delivery of Oxytet added conventionally, which is usually just powdered sugar sprinkled on top of brood frames. Here, our recommendation is in the spring that you treat while the spores are dormant, right? So we don't actually have an active infection at that point. And so you would add it 2 weeks apart, 3 times in the early spring. So we compared that, the level of antibiotic that was delivered across the hive to the amount of delivering it with our ProtectABee, with our bee vectoring product. And so it's not just Oxytet. So again, it has to be mixed in that diluent, that carrier powder that we talked about. And we got exactly the same amount of Oxytet concentration delivered across the hive in the same way. So it would be very it would not be kind to beekeepers in your area to be testing against foul brood on purpose. And so we don't do any sort of testing against active foul brood. And in fact, treating with oxytetracycline once you have an active foul brood issue going on with your hives, infection, that you need to, and the recommendation is that you burn those hives, right? Like it's not something that we would ever recommend people treat once they have presence of foul brood. So this is when the spores are in a vegetative state before they've had any issues. So in our area, we have had a long history of foul brood. And so it's in the soil, it's in the woodenware, it's just around. And so treating in the spring beforehand is just that safeguard of, it's like taking your probiotics or whatever. Like it's just that safeguard of making sure that you're not going to have issues.
Is Oxytocin commonly available in Ontario? It's not in the States. It used to be.
So we're the same as you guys in that oxytetracycline requires a veterinarian prescription. Okay. And so with our beekeeping associations, we have vets that work with us. And so everybody just gets their subscription and they get their Oxytet from the veterinarian. And then, of course, the veterinarian has to have appropriate education so that they actually know, the right way to apply it, because you do not want to, they're antibiotics. So you need to be very responsible with the usage of the antibiotics so that you don't get antibiotic resistant strains. And yeah, so that's pretty much the same. That I think the difference is that maybe we just have a more, I know that I've talked with US beekeepers, and I know that since there was the change from it not being available at your local beekeeping store, but rather having to get a prescription, that a lot of people are not using it. And I have heard anecdotally that there is some increase in AFB in some areas. I don't know if that's directly related to that change or not.
Wow. Well, this is really interesting, and the whole concept of using the bee to inoculate a plant specifically is an interesting concept. I don't recall ever hearing. So that's pretty cool.
Well, it kind of begs the question then, from a beekeeper's perspective, if I can go someplace and get this this material that's going to stop wrecking strawberries. If I can get it by the pound or the gallon or whatever it is that I can get it, can I go to a strawberry grower then and say, not only am I going to pollinate your strawberries, I'm going to protect them from this fungus that will get on there, and your pollination is going to cost you this much and your fungal protection is going to cost you this much from a beekeeper's perspective, and I want to get to the piece of equipment that you're using because that is really neat. But from a beekeeper's perspective, then they could be doing double duty for the grower and the beekeeper both?
Yeah, and so absolutely. So first of all, I've got to differentiate. We do not do outspencing with the ProtectABee. And so Bee Vectoring Technologies, they actually have a device that sprinkles powder on the bees. It's electronic. And so as the bee passes through, they get sprinkled and they take it out. It's very easy to get bees to move things out of a hive. It's very hard to get bees to take things into a hive and keep them in there. And that's where our patented technology is very unique, in that we can get them to move things in and keep them in the hive. So it keeps you from having to open up your hives to do your treatments. And if it's night, if it's raining, it takes 1 minute versus having to crack open a hive and put your treatments in there. You don't have to suit. Well, I'm not going to say you don't have to suit up, because that would be a liability. So of course, always suit up anytime you're dealing with your bees, but it does make it a lot easier. So but getting back to your question about that dual service offering for a beekeeper, absolutely. But it's Bee Vectoring Technologies, and I think they're the ones that are currently, like, if you wanted to offer both of those services, you would get in contact with Bee Vectoring Technologies and then have their system and be able to offer that up. but I'm not exactly sure how their services work, if they're contracting with beekeepers at this point or if they're doing that directly. But I think it's an amazing opportunity for beekeepers to offer another service. It's nice to have any of those symbiotic relationships where you can have your hives in one place, but you can also help the farmers out. Or if you're in the pollination industry, you can, have even more that you can offer to the farmers that you're, the crops that you're pollinating.
I mean, we've gone down this rabbit hole, but it's been really fascinating. You do so much more, but we've teased on this a little bit, or we've talked a little bit about the product, or what are you using for this dispensing, outspensing, expensing. Yeah. That's the only thing I'm used to is expensing. So tell us about the ProtectABee product. I've seen this advertised or on the web and everything.
Yeah, so we just finished up a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo.
That's what
we had over 500 and I think it was like 560 backers or something like that. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. We raised about $50,000 US. And so we're looking at delivering the product to beekeepers in June of this year. We still have the Indiegogo campaign went to in demand. When something's super successful on Indiegogo, they'll just keep it on there. So it's on in demand right now. And we're going to be opening up our e-commerce store as well. And what happened is that we hadn't planned on releasing ProtectABee till we had all of our powders ready to go, right? We wanted to work with these fungal powders for treating mites. And I would like to talk about that too in a little bit. We'll talk about how those fungal powders would work for treating mites. But that was kind of our original big goal. But when we went to do our testing, which was part of that grant that we were doing with the University of Guelph, we tested with commercial beekeepers, we tested with sideliners, and we tested with hobby beekeepers. And they all wanted to keep the ProtectABee. And we were like, well, we don't have powders. Why would you want to keep it? And it turned out that the cones, so there's cones that are part of the ProtectABee. So we have cones that go in and cones that come out. And those cones are red. And that red color was really originally because bees don't see in the red spectrum. It was to keep the bees from going in the outdoor. That was originally what we were doing. But it turned out that the red actually works really well for keeping, wasps and hornets and yellow jackets away. And then the device itself, people that were having issues with skunks scratching on the landing boards and bringing out the bees, they didn't seem to like the ProtectABee on there. The skunks didn't, so they weren't doing that anymore.
Erica, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second here.
Absolutely.
And give our listeners an idea of what you're talking about, the cones. These cones are, if not identical, very, very similar to the cones you see on bee escape boards, where that bees have a big opening that they can leave the honey super, but a narrow opening so they can't get back into the honey super. And what you've developed is an entrance with a piece of plastic with several of these cones all facing one way or the other, and you can turn them so that you can keep bees out of the hive or at least slow down entrances, or you can turn them so that you can really increase the ability for them to leave a hive. And the science is real practical, and I was impressed with how well it was adapted.
And you know what, Kim, exactly. So when I was trying to solve this problem, because the prototype they had at the University of Guelph wasn't working in terms of the bees taking in the powders, they would move them out. I really had to come up with something that would regulate the traffic, the in and the out traffic. So we basically have an in and an out door. They're separated in two halves, and you can choose which one's the in and which one's the out. But the cone technology absolutely came from those bee escape boards. Like it wasn't like, we came up with, cones from nowhere. We knew that bees didn't like to go in small openings that they couldn't see the color red. And a lot of people don't even know what those were older bee escape boards. They use now the Quebec one, and there's different escape boards that they use for moving bees away from the supers. But it used to be those cones where the technology where you would just get the bees to go through the wide openings, and then they wouldn't go back up into the supers. And that was my first prototype. I just bought those cones that we use for those bee escape boards, and I drilled some holes and glued them on in both directions to see if it would work. And it did. And so there's a lot more going on with the ProtectABee, but that's the part that really allows us to modulate that traffic going in and out.
Very cool.
Actually, there's 100 things going on with the ProtectABee. The way you can use it as you can close it completely so you can move hives without bees getting out. You have a web page on ProtectABee, and I really, really encourage people to go take a look at it, because what you guys have put together and the ways that you can use this are amazing. With or without the chemicals or the powders or anything else that you're doing, it's just a neat beekeeping technique that is not affecting the bees. It's good for the bee and the beekeeper, I think. A rare tool.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kim. I really appreciate it. And you know what? We have the beekeepers to thank for that. So I can't say that we came up with the cone technology to get the powders moving. But when we went out to talk to beekeepers, and especially our commercial beekeepers, they were the ones who said, if you add an insert for this, you could do this. And if you add an insert for this, you could do this. And if you put the solid in, we can actually feed them on that side, and on and on and on. And so, I love collaboration. I love working with beekeepers who have been in the field, they're like, this is going to save me so much time. And we do have an entrance reducer that you can put on there, and they don't propolize the entrance reducer. So you literally just barely slide the drawer out, and you can take the entrance reducer out or in, and there's no having to get your Hive tool in there and pull it out or in, it just makes everything really easy, and it just attaches right to the outside. So, it's just super, super easy. And it's really nice to help beekeepers out that way.
I only have one complaint. It fits a 10-frame Langstroth and it fits the flow hive, but it doesn't fit my 8-framer.
Yeah. So Kim, oh my gosh. So we were talking, we were talking to the companies, and we said, what percentage of people are buying 8 frames? And they said 5%. And I was like, okay, you know what? It makes no sense for us to make an 8-frame one if they're saying 5% of people are buying it. But I think 8-frame people must make their own boxes or some. I don't know what's going on, but there is definitely more than 5%, because I have heard so much about the 8-frame. So our next crowdfunding campaign, which is actually going to be on our Shopify account, we're going to get the pre-orders for the 8-frame. And then there will be an 8-frame one. That's what I'm trying to tell you, Kim. There will be an 8-frame one. Each time we make one of these tools, it's $20,000. So we got to make sure people really want it, because we're not in the production side of things. We're just getting into it now. So we don't know what our customers want, but the 8-frame people, there's either a lot of them or they're really loud. So we're definitely making an 8-frame one.
How about both? We'll go with both.
Take both, yeah.
Good. Okay.
Well, we'll have the photos of the ProtectABee product and links in the show notes.
Well, okay. So I would love to talk about the fungus that we're developing and has been developed for treating varroa mites, because the varroa mite is really right now, at least in North America, one of our biggest issues. And so the second other big one is small hive beetle. And since we released our ProtectABee the first time, we've actually added in a small hive beetle trap to the ProtectABee. So we had enough people that were concerned about that we thought, you know what, I think we can put something into this. So we're going to go down. I'm going to leave on Sunday, going down to Florida. And we're going to give a little test for some small hive beetle stuff. So we'll see if it works for that too. But coming back to the fungus with the varroa mites, So we were talking about that soil fungus that is used to treat the crops. We were talking about the strawberries, the black mold, and blueberries, etc. So the molds, what they do is they, in the ground, when they're at the roots of these plants, they feed on the insects that live in the ground, which are oftentimes mites, right? And just not varroa mites, but different kinds of mites. And the way that they work is that they basically, like, if you imagine a mold, they like grow over the shell, the exoskeleton of whatever they're attacking, and then they use both enzymes and mechanical pressures to break into their host. And it's really important to note that there's two different things that they're using to get in, and that's because when we treat mites, we're using chemicals that only have one method of working within the physiology of the mite. And so it's really easy for mites to evolve resistance to those chemicals, right? So, Apistan, those kinds of traditional chemicals. So with something having two methods of getting into a mite, it kills the mite, it goes inside of it, it replicates, and then it basically bursts open that mite and then just keeps growing on it, but the mite's dead. And is that with those, it's really hard for mites to evolve resistance to both a mechanical and an enzymatic pressure of getting inside of them. And the bees, when they have the fungus on, they clean it right off. It's hygiene activity. It's gone. It's not an issue for the bees. But the mites, they don't clean it off the mites, and then it grows on the mites. Or if they clean it off the mites, and cleaning it off the mites, they actually remove the mites right from the bees. So it can work either way. Just having a powder on there can, powdered sugar, you can get removal of mites as well. So the fungi, what happened is at the University of Washington, they at the same time we were doing our research, they identified a fungi called Metarhizium that will actually grow inside the hive. And I say they identified, they purposely evolved it so that it would grow inside the hive conditions, which are not the same as soil. It's warm and it's humid versus, cool soil. So they were able to develop this fungus. And so there is a fungus out there that can already treat varroa mites. And then we're still continuing on with our research where we're using a different fungus, also a soil fungus, to also treat the varroa mites. So we think that may be one of the ways to deal with varroa mites long term is using these fungi. But it's not the only thing we're using. We're approaching this with what we call a fail early, fail often mentality, in that we're trying lots of different things. There's so much in the literature, and going back, Kim, to that original academic question, somebody does some research in academia, they spend $50,000 and then it gets shelved and nobody ever gets to see anything beyond that because there's not money to go into it. So, we're looking at all these different possibilities, as well as scientists from across the world are reaching out to us because we have an easy way to deliver something. And so we're just trying all these methods to deal with these bigger issues in honeybees, which, are mites that are here, mites that are coming, and then small hive beetles, nosema, pesticide poisoning, all these issues. We want to have a system where we can deal with all of those assaults to our honeybees to make sure we have healthier bees.
And I want to add that it's also Asian giant hornet proof. Just saying.
Absolutely,
just saying. From the
yeah.
Pacific Northwest, I'm just saying that's a possibility too. Just need it in 8 frame.
Yeah,
need 8 frame.
Are you 8 frame too, Jeff?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Okay. For you guys.
So now there's 7 of us.
I'm going to do a crowdfunding, and it's going to be the Kim and Jeff 8 frame crowdfunding campaign. The ProtectABee.
We'll take that. We'll take that.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Beekeeping Today podcast.
There you
Yes.
go. Well, this fungus that you've got going it sounds exciting. And how close are you to being able to sell me a pound of this stuff?
That's 2 years or so out, because anytime you put a new product into being used with bees, you have to go through approvals. So EPA approvals in the States, PMRA up here in Canada, and Europe, we would have to do different approval. So there's just that timing of how long it takes to get it out to people. But a big part of it is it costs a lot of money. And so people get upset when, they see we're trying to raise money for research, and we're like, this whole process is expensive. And that's why most academia, they just quit because there isn't this steady supply of money. So for us, selling the ProtectABee, we're one, helping beekeepers, but two, it allows us to fund this research and get these products to beekeepers as quickly as we can, because, it's important. I don't know what your guys' winter losses were like, but we have been hit so hard this year that, a change needs to happen. Yeah, that's all I have to say is a change needs to happen.
Well, I'm telling you, if we can quit putting poison in a beehive, it's worth holding my breath until you make this work.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Well, Dr. Erica Shelley from Best for Bees, really enjoyed having you on Beekeeping Today podcast today. And the work you're doing, and I encourage our listeners to go out to the website. You are doing many more things than what we talked about here that our time here today together could allow. But I encourage our listeners to go out to your website, browse around, look at what you're doing, look at the ProtectABee product, and we look forward to having you back.
And are you okay, Jeff, if I share some of our social media channels so people can check us out too?
And I was going to mention that your profile is on linked in the show notes, and that has many of your profile social media links. But please go ahead now if you want to.
Okay, so if you want to find out about anything we're doing with Best for Bees, obviously bestforbees.com is the place to go. But we also have a Facebook page with over 12,000 followers where we talk about all sorts of things related to bees and pollinators. And that's our passion, is to, educate people about the importance of pollinators. And we're also on Instagram at best_for_bees. And you can read about some of our research in the January and February issues of Bee Culture magazine, which are also online. So you can take a look at that research if you're interested in seeing more about that. And also we do talk about the bee vectoring out to crops. And I think that was in maybe the August and September, or I think that's what it was, issues of Bee Culture magazine as well. So if people want to take a look at that. And then we plan on being out at Appomondia in August, and we're happy to come in and talk to beekeeping groups, and hope to see people, online and in conferences and in real life soon too.
That'll be really good. Well, you're definitely doing a lot more than I was aware of before we started our conversation today, and that's been a great thing learning about what you're doing. Fantastic.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Well, thank you for joining us. Kim, anything else?
I wouldn't know where to start, so no. How's that?
Well, very good. Erica, thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you back, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erica.
Thanks.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, wherever you download and stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. Even better, write a review and let other beekeepers looking for a new podcast know what you like. You can get there directly from our website by clicking on reviews along the top of any web page. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their continued support of Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at globalpatties.com. Thanks to Strong Microbials for their support of this podcast. Check out their probiotic line at strongmicrobials.com. We want to thank Better Bee for their longtime support. Check out all their great beekeeping supplies at betterbee.com. Thanks to Northern Bee Books for their support of Bee Books Old New with Kim Flodham. Check out all of their books at northernbeebooks.co.uk. And finally, and most importantly, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on the show. Feel free to leave us comments and questions at Leave a Comment section under each episode on the website. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot, everybody.